Welcome to another edition of Charity Chats, where I'm joined once again by my partners in crime, Rustomji, who is Head of Charities at Shakespeare, Martineau, and James Saunders, who is a Charity Audit Partner at Kingston Smith. You'll be pleased to hear, guys, I'm not going to be raising the subject around British politics and the shambles going on at the moment. But what I would like to explore today is your views about paying trustees. You may well have seen that there was an article in the charity press earlier this week from MPC, the new Philanthropy Capital, a think tank and consultancy for the social sector, which was urging the Charity Commission to make it easier to pay trustees, as it will increase diversity on boards. So first question, I think, Catherine, I'll start with you being the legal beagle, is do you think trustees should be paid? And if so, do you think it should be made easier, or is it relatively easy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the voluntary principle. I think it's what sets charities apart, that people choose to volunteer to become a charity trustee, not for remuneration. They choose because of the cause, because they feel aligned with that charity and they want to give something back, is often the expression people use. I think, since the 2006 Charities Act, we do now have a process to pay trustees for delivering additional services to their charity. So that's a big step up from where we were previously, where trustees couldn't receive any payment at all. But I don't think trustees should be paid for being charity trustees. I think that the principle of a voluntary position should be one that is protected. I think the process currently is fairly straightforward, has checks and balances in place. I think it works relatively well. So I wouldn't be in favour of us sort of making that any more straightforward or wide-reaching.
And the current process is going to the Charity Commission?
No, it's you can have up to half of the trustees receiving payment at any one time. There's an agreement, a written agreement between the charity and the individual trustee, setting out the services, setting out the remuneration. Everything is detailed and recorded, and it is decided by the non-conflicted trustees. So they determine whether it's in the best interest or not, and then it's recorded in the accounts that a trustee has received remuneration. So,
but if a trustee is not providing a service, you can still pay if you get Charity Commission approval?
Yes.
But that hasn't really changed, though, has it?
No.
And there are some. James, what's your viewpoint on this?
Okay, so my difficulty with this is the goalposts are moving, and more and more and more is being demanded of trustees in the trustee role. So the argument is not the same. The argument is not as it used to be. Trusteeship used to be something that was very high level. And you knew what your role was. It was that very high level role. You delegated most, in most charities where there was an executive team, you delegated most of the duties and responsibilities to that executive team. That is very rapidly changing, and we saw it with the kids' company trustees. Although in the end they were not found, as they didn't get into as much trouble as they might have done. But it doesn't change the fact there are more and more duties falling on trustees. More is expected of trustees, and in that changing landscape, I can totally understand why the question about pay keeps coming up. Having said that, it's come up, it's come up perpetually. NPC 2012, so 10 years ago, they were arguing the same thing. Is it time? Or the debate was still even then. Is it time to pay trustees? And the arguments were the same. They're well rehearsed. I don't know either way. I haven't made a conclusion either way. But I would say that the trustee role is changing so much; it's got to be open for debate constantly.
Yeah, I sort of slightly wondered whether this MPC is actually asking for people who can't afford to take time off, or their employers won't pay them, and you want them to be on boards, whether there's some sort of compensation of no loss of earnings, which I think is a slightly different concept to actually you're a trustee, therefore you get paid for the role. I don't know if you guys have a view on that.
And actually, it is a valid expense that a charity can reimburse the employer of a trustee for allowing that trustee to be given time off to come to meetings. So that route, it's a kind of backwards route, if you like, but that route already exists. And I suppose I would just query, what do we mean by diversity? Are we talking about financial diversity? You know, if the barrier is payment, is that the only issue? We're talking about thought, background, social mobility, gender, racial background. I just think it's a bit of a blunt comment to say it will improve diversity. What do we even mean by that?
Sorry, go on, James.
Diversity exists in the executive teams and in the wider charity teams. The diversity problem exists in those teams as well. I mean, executive teams are not diverse enough, and they get paid. So pay is not the factor there. Yeah. It's other factors. There are factors around culture and inclusivity and the whole mindset around teams. You know, on a board, it's all about, do you just recruit people that look and sound like you and have the same ideas as you? That's the big danger. How do you open your minds to different people, different thoughts, different ways of working? That's a mindset. That's nothing to do with pay. I don't think. I think to try and say that paying trustees will increase diversity is it's the wrong. As Catherine said, it's a blunt method of fixing a problem. It's much wider and deeper than that.
But I think there will be people who won't be able to become a trustee because financially it would be detrimental to them. And there may be costs involved. But I mean, as Catherine, I think, rightly pointed out, there are ways and means of dealing with that in the form of, on an expense basis or compensating the employee. Just because actually, interestingly, the report, just on the subject of diversity, went on to talk about charities should be reporting diversity of trustee boards in their annual reports. So do you think actually if that was another requirement in the annual report, that would increase or encourage social and ethnic diversity?
I would say it would encourage, it would improve transparency. I think an awful lot of charities do this anyway, frankly, and it's at the forefront of a lot of charities thinking. And it's going to be more. I certainly know when I talk to new charities, I do tenders with charities. There is an awful lot of focus on working with suppliers and providers who match the charity's own diversity ambitions, for example. So I think that awareness is there. I think the charity sector is actually very good at getting diverse, at recruiting and following its own diversity principles. Generally, I'm not saying it's universal, but and there's definitely that awareness there. Putting it into the annual report, I think an awful lot of charities already would do it voluntarily, so I don't see any problem with it coming in again. As with all these sort of things, it depends what you're going to take out as well, because you can't just keep adding things into the annual report. As it's probably a 40-page document at the moment, and add another couple of pages for your diversity principles and what you've done. But we've got a new statement of recommended practice coming out in the next couple of years. Can't fully expect that there to be something about diversity in there, and along with integrity and ethical and principles and impact and all those sort of things. So there's probably going to be quite a big reboot of the annual report, or add-ons to the annual report in the next round.
What about you, Catherine?
I think it'll be a disaster. I think it will be point scoring, box ticking. I'm always amazed when I'm asked for a potential trustee role what school I went to. Because I left school 30 years ago. So why would this be relevant? And then you realize it's your social background. And so whether because I'm Northern, would that mark me as lower social economic background? I have an exotic surname. Some people would say that makes me a diverse background trustee. No, it doesn't. I've been told because I'm short, that's almost a disability. So would I be picked for disabled? I just think it would become ridiculous. If you were desperate to look better, you would score me many times for things that are nowhere near true. And I just think it becomes just so tokenistic then. I think that would be my worry, that people are just trying to say we haven't got anybody who's a this and we need to find one so we can tick that box.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think diversity is so multifaceted. I mean, I sort of think a lot about lived-in experience when you're working with a charity, and what you want is diversity of thought, don't you? You want people coming in with different ideas and everything else, and that can come from many different places. Anyway, I think that sort of brings to a close our chat today on whether we should pay trustees. My sense is that both of you feel that as a generalization, the voluntary principles remain still very much so the key to the ethos within the sector. However, there may be circumstances where, because of the complexity of an organization, that it does merit it.